A warning, there's a moment of strong language in this episode. Listener discretion is advised. A whistle signaling the start of a swim meet. Water rushing all around. Arms and legs pumping. Heart racing. The cheering. The adrenaline. This is familiar territory for Jaylan Butler. He's a swimmer from Eastern Illinois University, or EIU, in Charleston, Illinois.
How do you normally do at your swim meets? Are you, usually one of the best swimmers, kind of in the middle?
I always like to try to sound the most humble I can. I say I'm right in the middle.
His accomplishments do the bragging for him. According to Jaylan's bio, he's good. In 2019, he was finishing his freshman year at EIU and his first collegiate swim season. That year, he competed in 10 meets during the season in 4 events. He swam the freestyle, butterfly, and backstroke. Finished first place in the 50 fly, just over 24 seconds. Season best times in the 100 back and 100 fly, and achieved the top EIU time of the season in the 50 fly with a time of 24.06. So when he wrapped up the meet in South Dakota and headed back to campus on a bus with his coaches and his teammates, Jaylan felt good. He had recorded a few lifetime bests, and the season was over. It was now time to relax, have fun, and unwind.
I felt invincible. I think everyone on the bus did.
But Jaylan and everyone on that bus was unaware of what was ahead. On the way back to campus, Jaylan was involved in a scary encounter that he had had talks with his parents about before, but never thought he'd actually face.
Did you ever have conversations with your family about how to deal with interactions with the police?
Almost every time I left the house, it was all those P's and Q's that they were giving me growing up that really prepared me for that moment.
That moment Jaylan's talking about arrived the night of February 24th, 2019. Jaylan says guns were pointed at his head and his life threatened. He says he was thrown on the ground face down in the snow, handcuffed, put in the back of a police car, and then detained without much explanation. All while his coaches and his teammates watched and tried their best to help.
I guess my initial thought was just, this is gonna end badly.
What happened that cold February night on the side of an Illinois interstate? Why Jaylan feared for his life? The unlikely person who tried to intervene on his behalf? What we know about the officers involved? And a missing piece of the puzzle that could reveal the truth about what happened when Jaylan Butler was detained by officers that night. I'm Brianna Collins. This is True Crime in Color. Jaylan Butler has been a competitive swimmer since his freshman year of high school. He knows the rigors of training and competing, months of preparation. He knows how good it feels to relax once all that's over. That's why he was looking forward to the bus ride home after that South Dakota meet.
On the way to conference is always kind of dreadful, and it's a long ride. We're like, we're here for business. You can't really, have fun and relax. And then on the way back, it's like, we're done. We did it. The season's complete. And then you reflect on the swim meet you just had, and if you did great, then you're even more ecstatic. If you didn't do so well, you still know that you're done for the season, so you can relax too. So you're still good. So it was just, I felt invincible. All my teammates around me were all cracking jokes, having a great time.
The trip from South Dakota to EIU in Charleston, Illinois takes more than 12 hours. So Jaylan and his teammates would have about 841 miles to relax. They took a route that put them on I-80. Once they hit this interstate, the swim team was back in Illinois and just a few hours away from campus. They planned to stop at a rest stop to stretch their legs, meet up with some parents of some members of the swim team for food, and then they'd be on their way. Once they made it to that rest stop, several people got off the bus. Jaylan was one of them.
I get off the bus, stretch my legs a little bit. A couple of other teammates are off with me. We're all just, talking about just like how long it's taking us to get back. And we're just having a good time out there, just talking. And a couple of us go back on the bus, kind of like the last one to get back on. And then I go, and my coach was like, "You want to update the story?" Because we were doing about the entire ride home.
Throughout the trip, Jaylan and his teammates had been updating social media, keeping people posted about where they were and what they were doing. Around 8 p.m. off I-80 at a rest stop near East Moline, Illinois, Jaylan took a selfie in front of a huge brown sign with white letters. It read, "Buckle up, it's the law," with a white icon of a seatbelt. Jaylan looks happy in the photo. He's smiling and throwing up a peace sign. It's very cold out, in the teens this night. So in the picture, you can very clearly see Jaylan wearing a black jacket.
So I had on some black Adidas joggers, my EIU black parka with the EIU logo on it, and it says EIU swimming on it. And then I had on I think it was my EIU swimming white t-shirt underneath. And then I had on my blue EIU travel shoes.
Jaylan's outfit might not seem that important, but it's a detail you'll need to remember. Seconds after taking the selfie, Jaylan started to walk back to the bus.
And before I could take about maybe a couple steps, the police are already there. They're already yelling at me, get on the ground, and stuff like that. But before that, I already, stopped, put my hand in the air, dropped was in my hands, got down to the ground. So I was always told just, whatever you think that they want you to do, just do it before they have to tell you, so you get through any problems without there being any problems.
But Jaylan didn't know what the problem was. He had no clue why 1 minute he was taking a selfie. The next, he was face down in the snow with guns pointed at him.
I guess my initial thought was just, this is going to end badly.
Was there ever a point when this was all going on that you feared that maybe you were not going to get to make it back home and make it home alive and see your family?
Yes, in a way. It didn't strike me in that moment, but it was definitely in my mind. I immediately said, I'm on the swim team. My bus is right there. My coach is right there. I have on EIU swim gear. And all I could hear was just them telling me to do all these different commands and stuff like that. And then they started handcuffing me and stuff like that of that nature. And then I just felt all this pressure on my body. I finally see my coach come over. I hear my coach come over, hear the bus driver come over. They try to de-escalate the situation. And a lot of stuff just was going all at once. It was just a lot of just different stuff all at once. And initially they told me that I was being detained or arrested for resisting arrest. And I was like, well, I know that's not right because I haven't done anything wrong to be arrested or detained. And then they took me over to the squad car, and then that's when they performed an illegal stop and frisk, and then they put me in the back. I waited for my coach to try to help me, and she came over. She was talking to one of the officers. By this time, there were about six or so officers there.
Initially, 2 police officers were on the scene. According to court records and police records, those officers were Officer Ethan Bush with the Hampton Police Department and Officer Travis Stays with the East Moline Police Department. Names that we'll revisit a little later. The team's white bus driver, Todd Slingerland, saw the squad cars pulling up to the bus with lights flashing and sirens blaring, and immediately, he got a bad feeling. I talked to him about what happened that night. He admitted he didn't know Jaylan very well, but he knew he had to get involved.
Knowing that Jaylan is a young black man, I immediately go, oh shit, and jump off the bus trying to get in front of these sheriff deputies. I did not get in front of the first one. I was step to step to block the second one. However, he did rack a shell into the shotgun and screamed selective words that are not worth repeating again, but basically, I'm going to blow your head off.
Todd has been driving buses for years and spent time in the military and says he's never experienced anything like this night.
With my hands up, go scream to them, why are you messing with my passenger? What is going on? Well, they try to scream at the deputies who now have Jaylan face planted in the snowbank and screaming at him, So as soon as they hollered at him, I immediately turned around and went to try to go calm Jaylan down and try to get the sheriff the deputy that was on top of him off of him. The one that was still on top of Jaylan said, well, he's resisting arrest. And I said, well, what are you arresting him for? Taking a picture in a snowbank?
Jaylan says the whole encounter didn't last long, but it felt like hours as everything was chaotic. He wasn't getting answers, and he didn't know what would happen next.
In the moment, I would probably tell you it lasted like 4 or 5 hours. That's how long it felt. But actually, it was way quicker than that. It was maybe at best 30 minutes from the span of when the police forgot on the scene to when there was no police left on the scene. And by this time, I'm on the bus again. But yeah, being in the moment, it definitely felt like another lifetime.
Eventually, officers realized Jaylan was not the suspect they were looking for. Jaylan was let out of his handcuffs. He was allowed to return to the bus to get his ID to show to officers. When he was free to go, Jaylan says he received a sort of half-hearted apology from one of the 6 officers who ended up on the scene.
Originally, I wanted an apology from the officer who had his gun out, but I think he was already gone by the time that, everything was happening. I don't really for sure remember if he took off immediately after or if he stayed and then took off. But there was one officer that came over and apologized, but it wasn't an apology that was, I guess, delivered the right way. It was more so of, I'm sorry that you got off the bus type of an apology and not really an accountability apology.
Once Jaylan was free to go, his lawyers say that he was not given a receipt for the stop and search, which is required under Illinois law. Jaylan climbed back onto the bus, and the team prepared for the final leg home. But as you can imagine, the mood shifted completely.
Immediately when I got on the bus, my emotions didn't set in. And then once I finally sat down and, we were just waiting for everyone. And then a couple parents came to the bus that we were supposed to be meeting there. I went and saw them because they were very shaken up and just kind of reassured them that I'm okay. So that's when I think my emotions finally set in for me. I sat down on the bus and all I really felt was kind of just really upset. I was very just not angry, but just very out of my happy mood that I was just in. So the entire bus felt it too. They were all really quiet. And like I said, we were all having a great time. Music was playing. We were all cracking jokes, having a great time. And then once the bus starts moving again to get back in the highway, it stayed silent. You could probably hear a penny drop outside for about 15 minutes. And then I was just I can't. In my mind, I was thinking, I just can't do this. It's way too quiet. It's going to get me thinking. I have another 3 hours left on the bus. So I stood up and reassured everyone that, everything's okay. No one's hurt. We're all fine. I know we just thought it was hard, but, we were just having a great time. Let's pick the energy back up. And it took them a little bit to kind of settle back down. But eventually they were all to get back to talking.
A short while later, the bus stopped at another rest area. This time, when Jaylan got off the bus, his teammates made sure he was safe.
And I remember getting off the bus, all of my teammates were outside waiting on me. They didn't go inside yet. They were literally outside waiting on me. And then we go inside and I'm not even the first one in there because there's about, 20 people in front of me, about 5 people to my side on each side and another 20 behind me. So there's this real big circle of them just surrounding me. And that's when it kind of clicked for me that they really were thinking that what just happened was probably or could have been the end. For me, that's when I thought wow, it actually really could have been.
Jaylan actually wasn't going to tell his mom what happened, at least not right away, because according to him,
she worries the absolute most, even the littlest situation. So I knew this was going to figure out really bad.
But his coach told him that his mom should hear the news from him, not from one of the other parents. So even though it was late when Jaylan finally made it back to EIU, he called his mom, who was in St. Louis, more than 2 hours away.
She started immediately on getting stuff down. She was asking me all these questions over the officer's names, past numbers, et cetera, et cetera. If I took these steps, those steps, these steps. She's like, write this stuff down. She really took the approach to make sure that we had everything in order, just in case like we needed to do something, and which we ended up doing.
It was actually Jaylan's mom who started to put the pieces together about what really happened that night and who police were really looking for. That night, multiple police departments in the area were looking for Frank Marquand Scott. According to police, Frank had fired a shot at a tanker trailer earlier in the night and then crashed his car along I-80. Police found Frank's car and were told he ran off. Police were searching for a black male with, get this, a black jacket and jeans. Jaylan was a black male on I-80 wearing, remember, a black jacket. But that's where the similarities really between the two end. The suspect police were looking for, Frank, was 6'6" and 230 pounds. Jaylan?
I was only maybe at best soaking wet, 165 pounds. And I had a very low cut, and I didn't have any muscle put on back then either. So I was very, just like this skinny kind of kid, just a swimmer. So it was kind of hard for me to vision that, they were mistaking me for this huge guy.
Police not only thought Jaylan was the suspect they were looking for, but the bus driver, Todd, says police thought the bus and its passengers needed help.
One of the city deputies officers told us that they thought Jaylan was the suspect they was looking for and that they was holding the bus hostage.
Jaylan went through a traumatic event at that rest stop in 2019. But he says it didn't sink in right away.
I ended up going to class the next morning and missing the entire lecture. I think I sat down and I looked down at my wrists and they were really bruised up badly from where the handcuffs were. And I felt like I just stared at that the entire lesson. And then before I knew it, my professor was tapping me on the shoulder, like, it's time to leave. And I'm like, I did not just miss that entire lecture. So I was, that's when it kind of hit me that I wasn't okay and that I was probably suppressing the trauma that I just had. So I went back to my dorm and just kind of closed myself off, which is what I normally do. I was like, I'll just take a couple of days to myself. But those days turned into weeks and started getting really dark. So I ended up reaching out to my mom and letting her know.
Healing proved to be a journey.
I did just about anything that would probably scare the normal person. I took to adrenaline and just, it felt fun and I was going to do it. It was a lot of, I think I could do, 3 laps underwater, and make it. I think I could, run this, even though I have asthma, and see if I can make it back before I need my inhaler. Just doing a lot of just really silly stuff that I look back on, but, it kind of gave me that sense of like, okay, you're Jaylan Butler. You did this before this, you're picking yourself back up. And a lot of that stuff was working, but it also wasn't because I would still have to go back home and, sit down with my thoughts. And I wasn't ready at the time. So I shifted towards the gym. That was probably the best coping mechanism I could have found. A lot of people say that I don't use it the healthy way because I may go to the gym, 14 times within a week, and I might go 2 times a day, but it's just something to give me something to do, go there, clear my mind, and then my body's exhausted. So I come home and then relax. And during that time, I was able to think about it in a way that was healthy because I would do it in the gym and I'd be in the gym crying, but still lifting, not harming myself or having thoughts of harming myself because I'm doing something that's giving me passion while I'm releasing some of the hurt that I have on me.
Jaylan eventually did take legal action. He was represented by the ACLU of Illinois. Almost 1 year after the incident, they filed a lawsuit against 6 officers. 2 officers were John Does. Their identities were never revealed. 2 officers I mentioned before. They were the first 2 officers believed to be on the scene. Officer Ethan Bush with the Hampton Police Department and Officer Travis Stays with the East Moline Police Department. The final 2 were Rock Island County Sheriff's deputies, Jason Pena and Jack Esquini. The lawsuit was filed against the 6 officers in their individual capacity, meaning their police departments were not sued, they were. In May of 2021, the ACLU sent out a statement saying they had reached a settlement with 2 of the officers who directly interacted with Jaylan that night. Jaylan filed a stipulation to dismiss the remaining claims. I reached out to the 2 officers and 2 deputies named in the suit, but my phone calls and my emails were never returned. So I decided to request information from police departments and sheriff's offices about where these men are currently employed and where they've been employed in the past. I wanted dash cam or body cam footage of the night of Jaylan's detainment. I wanted police reports of what happened that night. I also wanted to see if the officers had any citizen complaints or disciplinary write-ups in the past. Here's what I learned. We'll start with Rock Island County Sheriff's Deputy Jason Pena. The sheriff's office told me he did not have any citizen complaints or discipline in his personnel file. I was told the sheriff's office did not have body cameras at the time of Jaylan's detainment. A letter from the state's attorney's office stated that neither Jason Pena nor Jack Asquini had anything to do with the detainment or the arrest of Jaylan Butler. Jason Pena submitted a report February 12, 2020, almost 1 year after Jaylan's encounter with police. He says that Jack Asquini was his trainee. The report tells pretty much the same story as Jaylan. In it, Pena says he saw 2 officers already at the scene trying to detain a man when he and Asquini got there. Pena says Asquini, his trainee, put his knee on that man's back while the other officers spoke with people on the bus. According to Pena's account, he and Asquini were there for just a short time, and then they left. At the time of this recording in July 2021, Pena is still employed as a Rock Island County Sheriff's Deputy. He still has not returned any of my phone calls or emails. I also got information from the Rock Island County Sheriff's Office about its other deputy named in the lawsuit, Jack Asquini, the trainee. According to that information, Asquini does not have any citizen complaints in his file. He does have a write-up in his personnel file, though, but it stems from a traffic crash he was found to be at fault for involving a squad car in July 2019. Asquini wrote 2 reports about Jaylan's detainment, both similar to Pena's story. In Asquini's reports, he says he never spoke to the man on the ground in handcuffs the night of February 24th, 2019. Asquini was previously employed with the Moline Police Department, another area police department. Information from them showed no disciplinary records, but it did reveal a citizen complaint that included allegations from a man who claimed Asquini groped him during a traffic stop. At the time of this recording in July 2021, Asquini is still employed as a Rock Island County Sheriff's Deputy. He, too, has not returned phone calls or emails. The 3rd officer named in the lawsuit is Officer Travis Stays with the East Moline Police Department. I didn't get too much back from my request for information about him. The police department says it does not have body cam video because they don't have body cams. There's no dash cam video either because apparently Officer Stays was not in his department-issued squad car. There are also no citizen complaints or disciplinary incidents. I did get a statement from the East Moline Police Chief, however. It says in part, quote, "We are confident Officer Stays acted appropriately given the limited information he had at his disposal, and we're grateful that no one was physically harmed in the interaction." At the time of this recording in July 2021, Officer Travis Stays is still employed with the East Moline Police Department. And no, I haven't heard back from him either. Finally, Officer Ethan Bush was the 4th officer named in the lawsuit. He's the only officer named who is not still employed with the department they were employed with the night of February 24th, 2019. I learned a lot about Officer Bush. He has 6 years of law enforcement experience. He was sworn in as a Hampton police officer in February 2019, just days before his encounter with Jaylan. He worked at the Hampton Police Department a little more than 8 months. His offer letter said his first 12 months were a probationary period. Prior to working with the Hampton Police Department, Officer Bush worked with the Milan, Illinois Police Department for a little more than 3 months. His employment was terminated during his probationary period there. They allege Officer Bush told his superiors no, complained, responded to neighboring jurisdictions without being requested. His squad GPS would disconnect for hours and then reconnect at a lengthy time later. He wasn't completing neighborhood checks, business checks, reports, or traffic stops. Wouldn't use his wireless mic and backseat camera in his squad car, and met up with Rock Island police officers during his shift. Officer Bush used to work for the Rock Island City Police Department. The Hampton Police Department, where Officer Bush worked at the time, was one of the few departments that did have body cameras. I did not receive any body cam footage from my request, but someone else I talked to did. Her name is Elizabeth Wattus. She's now a reporter at WMTV in Madison, Wisconsin. But when she was a reporter for WQAD in Moline, Illinois, she reported on something pretty interesting. Here's part of Elizabeth's 50 missing minutes story.
In this body camera video, you can see the car of the black man police were looking for crashed off Interstate 80, exit 1 towards Hampton.
Who we got down there?
Exactly 22 minutes later, the former Hampton, Illinois police officer wearing the body cam, Ethan Bush, standing still, his video stops.
Elizabeth requested and got back body cam footage from the Hampton Police Department the night of Jaylan's detainment. This would be footage from Officer Ethan Bush's body cam. But what's more interesting is what's missing from that footage. Here's Elizabeth.
They sent me 2 separate videos, and it wasn't what was in the video. It was what was missing from the videos that just really kind of took off and turned into the missing 50 minutes. Basically, they sent me what happened before they met up with Jaylan Butler and what happened after. And the interactions with him were mysteriously missing.
Like any good reporter, Elizabeth had questions about why 50 minutes from the encounter with Jaylan were missing.
And then when I got Hampton's body cam video, it was kind of, I had some questions. Where was this piece missing? The time codes on the body cameras were off. I wanted to know why. And the response I got was, we are not required to explain information to you. We're just required to give it to you. So it was kind of like a roadblock there where I was just looking for like a really simple explanation of something I thought in my mind, but legally they weren't required to give me that.
Elizabeth further pressed the Hampton Police Department about Officer Bush's missing footage.
They wouldn't even talk to me. All communication with that department was written in a report. And so, yeah, that's what they said. When I said, why, what's your explanation here, is that the gun strap, and you can see in the video that Officer Bush, he's from Hampton, is wearing a gun strap. You see him take it off. You see him put it back on. And they say the gun strap hit the button, the record button, basically stop and record, and turned it off and on multiple times, which kind of goes back to your other question. So then I said, okay, well, give me the other times it turned it on and off. And they didn't have anything to give me there. If it turned on and off multiple times, there should have been more than one stop. So that's what they said, is just it was an equipment error, basically. And that's why it happened. But it's interesting. What stood out to me was when it turns off, Officer Bush is actually standing still.
In Elizabeth's 50 missing minutes story, she reached out to the company that makes the body cams. Here's another clip from that story.
Hampton police explained the missing 50 minutes by saying Officer Bush's body camera was, quote, on multiple instances turned off due to equipment, the AR-15 sling making contact with the on/off switch, meaning Officer Bush's gun strap turned the camera off more than once.
I reached out to the company that makes the body cameras, Axon. I asked them if they've ever gotten a complaint about body cameras turning off due to equipment coming in contact with the on and off button. This is what they said. To our knowledge, this is not an issue that police departments regularly experience, and we do not have metrics that track this data. The way in which our body-worn cameras are built allow them to be worn alongside other tactical equipment, such as radios, without issue. The on-off button resides in the center of the device and is concave to eliminate the risk of it being accidentally tapped.
I interviewed Jaylan in June 2021, more than 2 years after that encounter. Jaylan says prior to the night of February 24th, 2019, he'd only been pulled over for driving in the passing lane, and he has family members in law enforcement, so he's always looked up to and respected law enforcement. Growing up, he told his mom he wanted to be a police officer. I told Jaylan 3 of the 4 officers named in the lawsuit were still employed by the agencies they worked for that night. Here's what he had to say.
I wish I could say it shocked me, but being that so much of this, like the day and age that we have with, access to technology and actually seeing what police officers are doing in the moment and then hearing that they only was fired or they weren't convicted, it doesn't shock me. And more so just kind of fires me up more to become an FBI internal affairs agent. It just really makes me want to get out there and like really make a change.
Jaylan is entering his senior year at EIU. He's studying political science with a minor in criminology. Jaylan says his case, as well as his family's history in law enforcement, encouraged him to want to make a difference. But Jaylan says so did Ahmaud Arbery's story, the black man from Georgia killed by white men while he was out for a run in 2020. George Floyd's story, the black man killed when a police officer kneeled on his neck in Minneapolis months later that very same year.
George Floyd really kickstarted everything for me because it was kind of like the same situation. I mean, I had an officer that was pressing down on me, and it was just a lot. So it really just prompted me to, want to see a change all around.
Jaylan not only mentioned he wanted to work for the FBI, he also talked about a possible career in law enforcement or in the legal system, or maybe opening up his own gym one day. He has big dreams and feels more like himself these days. But we'll never forget what happened alongside I-80 that cold February night.
How do you move forward, past this?
I think my favorite answer is you don't. And I think it's best that you don't get past it. As weird as it may sound, I think this incident is my favorite one that ever happened to me. I think without that happening, it would have never opened all these doors I've had open for me. It wouldn't have, that incident really made me that night into a man following afterwards. It forced me to think wiser, in a way I like to say.
In August, Jaylan will start his final year of college. He has a lot to look forward to.
I think the only thing that I'm hopeful for is success. And I go to my mom about that. She's a very successful businesswoman. I'm like, how can I get to your level of success? And I think now for me it doesn't have to be, I'm this high up on the food chain, but it's just as, I've completed a goal that I wanted. So I think that's what I'm looking forward to in the future, just being able to know that I've made a difference.
Jaylan is still an athlete and a swimmer at EIU. He's also spending time now working with the Swim On Foundation. It was started in 2019 in St. Louis, Missouri. It promotes water safety and works to prevent drowning. It's something he's passionate about and wants to share with others. To learn more or to donate, visit swimonfoundation.org.